Hi, and welcome to another episode of Mediate This. Today I am joined by Keld Jensen. Keld, it is good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Keld, and I'm going to let you dig in and tell me more about yourself and the listeners and everything. But you've been doing this for a long time. You've been negotiating for a long time. You are a publisher. You do speaking engagements. You've done master classes, and from what I've learned and what I've read, you've been doing this. Well, I don't know. Either you've been doing this twice as long as I have, or I've been doing it about half as long. I don't know what sounds better. Like I've been doing half, or you're twice as long. But yeah, tell me just a little bit about like where you're at, how you got
Uh-huh.
into this, just a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, short version is my mission in life, I figured out, is to help individuals and organizations improve the way we negotiate. And I actually mean that because I have learned throughout the years that we can all improve the way we negotiate, and that is good for everybody. Very, very briefly, my background is originally in technology. I was the CEO of a public company back in Scandinavia. I'm from Denmark originally before I moved to the US. And I thought it was great at negotiation, Matthew, because a lot of CEOs think they're very good at it, even though they may never have studied it. And I never studied it. I just did it like a lot of people are doing. So what happened, and this is the short version, I hired a negotiation expert in Stockholm, my former partner, who's unfortunately is not among us anymore. And he came in and moved me in less than 2 hours from being unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent in the world of negotiation. Because he made me realize that what I thought I was good at, I was actually miserable at that. And that at the same time made me realize that, God, I have to do something about this, because I saw so many people just like myself who actually are doing it, but not knowing what they are doing. And again, some people are good at it automatically. It's not the majority, but I do obviously mean great negotiators out there. But it's a skill. It's something you need to learn. It's something you need to be educated in. And what scares me almost every night, Matthew, is how many people who are just going at it without having any formal background or degree or experience or education, or perhaps never even read a book about it. So since 1998, this has been my focus. I help organizations and governments globally on improve the way we negotiate. I am an associate professor at 4 different universities. I'm a published author of 25 books. I'm a keynote speaker, and I live and breathe negotiation. That's the short version.
That's the short version. That's quite a it's quite a list though. So yeah, it's I've been doing this for, I guess, almost 17 years, and I had no idea that I actually liked doing this, could do this, wanted to do this, but life sort of happened. I got into this when I got divorced,
Mhm.
and my ex and I couldn't communicate, couldn't get along. We kept going in front of the judge, and the judge was tired of seeing us and sent us to mediation. And I'm
Right.
sitting in mediation and with my attorney, and the mediator is going back and forth, helping us negotiate in separate rooms because we couldn't sit in the same room together. We tried that, and that didn't work well with us.
Right.
And I sat there and had that epiphany, going, "This is the coolest thing in the world. Like,
Mm,
I think I could do this." But at
mm.
the time, I didn't have degrees, I didn't have training. And so actually I went back to school, got an undergrad. I mean, I started at, okay, I need an undergrad, and did my
Right.
entire education for this. Like I may be
Right.
one of the few people out there that maybe actually went to college and actually is using everything they went to college for. It's not like, you go to college and you end up doing something completely
Yeah.
different.
Yes.
Um, and so life sort of happened that going, okay, and I found that I really loved, I mean, I'm an extrovert. So I love people, I love talking, I love, engaging, I love,
Right.
that challenging thinking, but really honing a craft. And look, as I'm, as a negotiator, I'm sure that we still learn every day.
Oh
You
God, yes.
know,
Mhm.
I mean,
Oh yes.
we're never done learning because
No.
life happens. You're like, oh, I could use this. Or
Right.
you meet somebody, you read something, you're like, I could use that.
Right.
Um, and so primarily, I guess yeah, I mean, until 2019, All of my education, all of my, just basically all my negotiation was based around family law.
Right.
Um, and then one day there was a Facebook post that my wife saw advertising Harvard Business School's negotiation mastery program. And she said,
Right.
you know, and my wife is a paralegal and she's brilliant. And so, you know, she says to me, she goes, you know, you haven't done any continual education training. I mean, other than, you know, just whatever, you know, the licensing is. She said, you haven't
Right.
done anything since 2012.
Mm.
And I'm like, yeah, I'm sort of hungry for some new stuff. So I signed up for it
Right.
and then started the course. Had no idea what I actually signed up for because, again, my
Right.
entire background was family law. And all of a sudden,
Right.
there's nothing family in Harvard Business School. It's all
No.
business negotiation.
Right.
And then we're negotiating with people all over. Like we had 434 students all over the world.
Right.
So then you get different cultures, different backgrounds, and all negotiators.
Right.
And I was a fish out of water because I'm going, I mean, like they're like, okay, we're going to negotiate, you know, a bed and breakfast land deal. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And I'll never forget the first mediation or negotiation we had. And well, this was the other thing. I went from being a mediator.
Right.
I'm not on a side.
Right.
I'm facilitating the negotiation too in the training.
Sure.
No,
Right.
now I'm in the hot seat.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's complete. And so again, that was completely different going, oh, wait, I have skin in the game.
Right.
So I learned in the first negotiation. It was funny because I had a guy from I think Germany. He was a banker from Germany.
Right.
He was a negotiator for this bank, right? I think it was
Right.
a Deutsche bank in Germany. And so we negotiate, and at the end of it, we have to, you know, write down, you know, how was the negotiation? What did we think? You know, because they gave us our scenario. And I remember going around the house to my wife going, I nailed it. I nailed this negotiation. I nailed this thing. And so that was what I wrote. Well, look, so
Right.
then the professor then looks at what we, you know, what we did, how we negotiated, what we wrote.
Right.
My counterpartner did the same thing.
Right.
I nailed it. I nailed
Right.
it. Well, what we learned though from the professor was we left $250,000 worth of value still sitting on the table that we didn't
Yeah.
recognize or look at.
Right.
Okay, that never happened again. And so that was my first negotiation where I'm like, okay, it's not family, we're in the business world.
Right. Right.
And that was a whole learning curve, but everything that you can take back into what you do on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yes.
And then I was hungry. Like I'm going, okay, I'm really liking this. So then I applied because it's by application and acceptance only. I did
Right.
apply then to the Harvard Law School Mastery Negotiation Executive Education Program.
Right. Right.
And I was one of 50 in the world that got accepted.
Right.
And that was an honor.
Right.
Then, so I already had a taste of, okay, business. So then with that, we're doing just like you. It's like now we're negotiating governmental stuff.
Right. Right.
It takes that, and of course, now what was funny, out of the 50 people in that course, I was the only mediator.
Right. Oh, wow.
And everyone else, like we had, you know, the CEO of Delta Airlines, like you said, we had Delta Airlines, we had banks, we had law firms from around the world, real estate agents. I mean, all the professional, different people around the world that were invited, but I was the only mediator. And it was interesting because in between our sessions, people would come up, they're like, all right, Matthew, how do you know these things? Or how did you do these things? Like you were sitting in the middle and stuff. And I'm like, it's a different perspective when you're helping people negotiate rather than actually negotiating.
Sure.
So when you were in the business world doing your stuff, were you actually negotiating on behalf of, or were you teaching how to negotiate? Were you teaching facilitation, mediation? Like, what were you doing?
Well, I loved your story, by the way, Matthew. It's very interesting. And it's funny that you said that you had previously been in a role of helping parties to negotiate instead of negotiating yourself. And the fun part is that's actually what I believe negotiation is all about. And that's actually what I preach and what I try and help my students and clients to do. Because what my approach to negotiation is, I'm really not a big fan of smoke and mirrors. You know, you have a lot of our colleagues out there in the world who preaches a lot about, well, it's all about manipulating the counterpart and trying to convince them and reading the body language and seeing when they're lying. And I think all of that is fun in a circus. But in the real world, when two organizations, and I'm a commercial negotiator myself, when two organizations and the individual sitting in that negotiation are meeting up, there's only one real purpose for organizations to negotiate with each other, and that is to create and distribute value. That's it, end of the day. So there's a lot of mathematics. And to me, it's really teamwork, because if you and I were representing different organizations, I would say to you, Matthew, I'm here today to help you reduce your cost, your risk, your liabilities, and help you improve your profit. I see that as my purpose. Are you interested in me helping you doing that? Now, I can promise you, Matthew, when you try and do that in the real world, your counterpart will look suspicious at you, but they will say yes, because obviously they want you to help them with all of that, right? Yeah. So when you get that acceptance, then the next step is that you ask them, and I see that your purpose here today is to help us reduce our cost, liabilities, and risk, and help us improve our profit. So it's actually teamwork right now, guys. We have to figure out how can we make 2 + 2 = more than 7. And I want to be successful and create progress, but I don't want to do it at your expense. And I want you to be more successful than you were before you came here today, but that shouldn't happen at my expense either. And I'm sure now, I don't know the simulation that you mentioned where you left several $100,000 on the table, but that is basically what I see every day, every week, every month, Matthew, that you have organizations that think they're great at negotiation. They do a handshake, they sign the contract, they leave the conference room, and they have no, and I apologize for my English, but they have no freaking idea that they left money on the table. They don't see it, they don't realize it, they don't capitalize it. And that is, to me, really my whole mission and purpose, because so many people, or too many people, let me put it that way, are too obsessed with that approach to negotiation that it's a competition. I should win, you should lose. Yeah. And if I win, I'm happy. And if you're losing, and I'm sure you're losing, I'm even happier. And one of the things that I really talk about in the book I've been doing for years is that we have to change the mindset of what negotiation is all about. And I'm very, very in agreement with everything that Harvard is doing. Harvard is great. They have some really outstanding professors up there, and I'm working together closely with several of them. And they are preaching the same approach that is really collaborative approach. You know, we have to identify that value. And I'm just emphasizing this, and then I'll shut up. I'm just emphasizing this again, because I'm seeing especially a lot of ex-law enforcement and FBI negotiators coming into our world right now, because what happens is they're getting retired, then they get their pension, and then they're sitting thinking, what should we do? Oh, we are great negotiators, and they are at hostage negotiations. And I really admire what they're doing. My God, they must be tough. And I wouldn't do it, and I can't do it, by the way. But what I often see is they come into this world and start preaching all the tools and tricks and techniques that you can use in a hostage negotiation. But back to what I just said, a commercial negotiation is not a hostage case. You have to build trust. You have to build a relationship. I know a hostage negotiator will say, well, you have to do that with the criminal that you're talking to as well. Yes, but it's not long term. You know, when you have convinced him to come out and release whatever he took, then he's arrested and go to jail, and you don't have to talk to that guy ever again, right? Your business partner, hopefully, you have to deal with him or her for the next 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years, and you have to create value, right? So anyway, let me return that to you. What's your take on everything I just said?
So it's interesting. So in the world of family law, when I'm dealing with, a divorcing couple, it is exactly what you're saying. I need to win, you need to lose. No, I want to win. So like somebody's trying to get away with taking as much as possible. Somebody's trying to get away giving as little as possible, right?
Right.
And so the analogy that I use to them is this. I say, look, a lot of times when you come into a negotiation, resources might seem scarce, but emotions are high, judgment is clouded.
Right.
I said, it reminds me a lot of the kids' game, Hungry, Hungry Hippo. You've got the hippos, and what you do is you sit there and you hit that hippo so fast to grab as
Yes.
many marbles as possible. But at the
Right.
end of the day, did you get what you wanted, or did you just get a marble? Like
Right.
you may have gotten things that you don't even care about, but who
Right.
cares? I got them.
Yep.
And so I'm like, look, what we need to do is we need to slow down. We need to look at every piece. And this is what happened. This is what I learned in that first negotiation where I left $250,000 on the table. I learned the difference. And this was one thing that they just honed in on us at Harvard was do not go into a negotiation to claim value. Go into a negotiation creating value. And that's what I try to do is look at all as as a mediator, try to help everybody look at even the hidden things that may not look like they have any value. But I tell people all the time, we're in a mediation, we're negotiating. Everything is up for negotiation. Everything is on the table. Nothing is sacred. So even if you don't think it has any value, tell me about it and we'll see if it actually has value. And then that way, like you said, 2 + 2 = 7. A lot of times too, whether it's business, and this is where I took business and family and sort of merged the two, just like you're saying. They taught us in business that, you know what, like Apple may sit down with the MLS and need to negotiate the MLS season pass, right? That's an ongoing relationship. That's not a one-time done and we're never going to see each other again.
Right.
There's going to be season. Okay, what's the pricing for the next season? This is a relationship.
Sure.
And so I tell people in mediation as well, look, you guys have a kid together. Your relationship is not, okay, we're going to negotiate today and you're never going to see this other person. You're going to see them at the exchange. You're going to see them at school. You're going to see them at graduation. This is relationship building.
Right.
And so no, I agree 100% with what you're saying. And that was what they taught us was this is about relationship and about creating value, expanding the pie, not just eating my pieces and going, well, I'm full.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I love what you're doing, Matthew. You're actually telling your clients that even though it is a divorce and some people think that's final, that is basically just the beginning of a long relationship, especially if your kids, right?
Yeah, it's the beginning. It's the end. I tell people, you have just left 3 levels of relationship. You left acquaintance, intimacy, loss of intimacy, and now you're transitioning into a business-like relationship. You don't have to like or dislike who you're in business with. It's business. And so I'm like, if you can leave the emotion behind and think of this person as this is simply an equal CEO of the company and you're running a company. And I always put it in business terms. I'm like, we're here to transition you into creating a business called Kid Inc. And by doing it, and then I tell them even your parenting plan, it's the corporate docs that structure Kid Inc. They let the CEO know what you're allowed to do and not allowed to do as a CEO. And you're not going, why would you try to set up your CEO to then crash the company? Really? That's immature and that's emotional. We're not doing emotion anymore. And that's how I help them transition going, we're moving into a business. And now, as well as I do.
Oh, yeah. I love the whole thing, Matthew. And what is really interesting, obviously, as I said earlier, I'm coming from a commercial background and see myself as a commercial negotiator. But my editor at McGraw-Hill was really tough. So she forced me to write the book so it becomes compatible with a divorce negotiation, with a student negotiating with his faculty, with anybody that is going on a trip, with somebody who talked to the bank, because a lot of the tools are actually identical, as you said, and I just love that. I never thought about it that way, but you are now KIT Incorporated, right? Now you're running a business called a KIT and you have to make it work. And I completely agree with you. When you are going through a divorce, there's a lot of emotions, but the fun part is there's a lot of emotions when you do a commercial deal as well.
Absolutely.
The word revenge, people often laugh when I say there's a lot of revenge in business, but they are. People get offended, they get frustrated, they get annoyed. And there's certainly payback in that world as well, because human beings are irrational. I think we have to conclude that, all of us. We are irrational. We love to call ourselves very rational, but we are not.
Impulsive.
Impulsive too,
irrational and impulsive.
Absolutely.
especially
One
when
of my big
negotiating.
heroes is Professor Daniel Kahneman, that I'm sure a lot of your listeners know. He won the Nobel Prize in economics, even though he's coming from psychology. And the reason he did it, I'm simplifying, obviously, is basically because he called out that all people are irrational. We make emotional decisions, and then we find the fact to prove that our emotional decision was correct, and we don't even know it. And the fun part, when I'm quoting Kahneman, people get very offended. You know, when I'm sitting with the top of our organization and saying, why do you make so many irrational final conclusions? People get really offended. I'm not irrational. I'm very rational. And we just have to agree and accept that we are irrational, whether we're sitting in a divorce negotiation or whether we're sitting in a merger acquisition.
Yeah.
Emotions dictate a lot of the things we're doing.
Well, and a lot of times, you know, when as a negotiator or mediator, when we're seeing those pieces, and then we're just shedding light on it,
Right.
because people are actually thinking and operating emotional, they take it personal. That then makes it difficult to negotiate.
Oh, God,
Because
yes.
then when you take that, you know, when you say, hey, look, why are you being irrational? I'm not being irrational, but that's an emotional response. And then that now hurts the relationship that you got to build to negotiate, so that it creates a win-win situation.
I can tell you, Matthew, the worst negotiation I can ever be a part of, and I know it before I step in, is when I'm doing a merger acquisition and I'm sitting with the owner of the company. Because he or she is so emotionally involved in their company, obviously,
It's their
that
baby.
everything that the counterpart might be saying that could be perceived as criticism is not being accepted very well. And I've been sitting in negotiation where we had a counterpart that was giving us actually an outstanding proposal, but they said something that could be perceived as offending about the company. And my client, the owner, just packed his bag and left. And I was trying to talk to him on the way out, saying, it's a great offer. It's everything you wanted. Yes, but they said this and that. And I was, you know, again, it's all emotional. Basically, just like the whole divorce thing. Same thing, same level. You know, it's a hard thing.
Yeah, yeah, it's a hard thing. So going back to you had mentioned, you know, a lot of, you know, FBI guys, you know, retire and whatnot. What I find in my arena of, you know, in the legal field is most of the mediators that are doing, you know, legal stuff in the family world, they are retired judges, retired attorneys. So again, it's like, okay, I'm retired. It's like, okay, now what? Well, you know, I used to argue, you know, I used to listen to people or whatnot. And so, yeah, I can do this too. No, not exactly. Like, you know, no. Now, what's interesting was when I first had the idea of negotiating,
Mhm.
you know what my long-term goal was? Hostage negotiation.
Oh, yeah. Well, there you go.
That was my goal. I'm like, that would be so much fun and so amazing. And
Right.
people looked at me, they said, okay, fun, no. Amazing, no. And they would say, Matthew, like how would you be able to sleep at night if you
Right.
knew that were negotiating something and the hostage killed, and you know, or you know, the guy killed a hostage?
Right.
And I said, I would sleep okay. They're like,
Right.
okay, you're
Right.
just not right in the head. I said, no, because you know what? I would know that I at least tried. I wasn't standing there
Yes.
with my M16 or my
Yeah.
AR-15 just waiting to
Right.
shoot something. I know that I tried. And look,
Right. Mm.
I would pull every skill set of every tool that I would ever be presented, and I would do that.
Right.
So
Right.
that was my goal. So what was interesting was by the time that I was finally certified, ready to go, had my degrees and everything, I did not know this. I aged out.
Right.
I was too old to join the FBI
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay.
because and I didn't know there was like a limit. I'm like, they got old guys working with the FBI. Why can't I start now? There's
Right.
a mandatory, I think it was a 25-year retirement
Mhm.
by a certain age. And so it's a mandatory. Well,
Right.
if you start too late, you don't hit the mandatory, you can't do it. So no, you have to be a certain age. And I'm like, okay, I
Oh, I didn't
aged
know that.
out.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, okay, fine. Now what? I'm like, no, okay, family. We'll stick with
Mhm.
family.
Right.
But I do enjoy, you know, back
Mhm.
a number of years ago, you know, with the real estate issues and stuff. I was doing some foreclosure stuff. That was fun. I did a couple small business stuff, real estate, HOA boards, personal injury. It was good, but it was a lot more eventful, fun, rewarding, dealing with families, knowing that we're actually making an impact.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I've really enjoyed the business world. And then what's interesting, I have a friend. She called me up one day. I'm going to transition here to something. But I got a call one day from her. She said, Matthew, I got a letter in the mail from my credit card company, and they're saying that I owe this, that, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, just call them and negotiate it.
Sure.
And she said, oh, I wouldn't know what to say. I'm like,
yeah. Right.
You want me to do it for you? She's like,
right.
Would you? I'm like, yeah. So we went out and had breakfast, and after breakfast, she gave me the letter, and I looked at it. I'm like, all right, yeah, here's a number. Let me call it. So, what are the terms that you want? What would you like to happen? How would you like this? Okay, fine. So we called, put him on speaker. She said, hey, I'm sitting here with, I have someone that I'm authorizing to talk on my behalf or whatever. So not too long, we negotiated a settlement, and it's like, and she was like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's nothing that's off the table for negotiation.
No.
I mean, whether it's, whether it's bargaining for, I don't know, buying something. People try to negotiate on cars. People try to negotiate on different things. Do you do that? Do you recommend? Do you teach like negotiation on like buying stuff, bargaining? Like how do you negotiate your utilities down? Like especially as expensive. Are you able to negotiate gas? Can you negotiate at the grocery store? Like.
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Let me just take one step back before I get into that. And, I was born and raised, as I said earlier, in Denmark. So I have a European background. I've been in the US for, 13, 14 years now. And one of the cultural differences, because there are quite a lot of cultural differences between Europe and the US. And one of them is, and I'm generalizing, obviously, but Europeans are naturally negotiating more than the average American.
Really?
I call, again, and I don't want to offend anybody, I love this country and I'm a citizen as well, but a lot of Americans are bargain hunters and not negotiators. And for whatever reason, they accept when they get the terms dictated by the major corporations. So when the electricity company says, well, that's it, or the local gym raised the price, or what have you, a lot of them are just saying, well, I don't like that, so I'm going to change to another supplier if that's an option. And I'm often, but why don't you try and negotiate that? And, when I provoke people with that statement, a lot of them look really curious and say, but can I do that? And I said, well, last time you went out and buying a car, did you just pay the price? No, obviously not. I negotiated that, right? So we have all agreed as a country that we can negotiate price on a car, but why can't we negotiate when we go to the grocery store and buy 20 bottles of wine, because that's a big purchase? Why can't we negotiate with the electricity company? Why can't we negotiate with the bank? I mean, it's something that I would love Americans to be more aware of, and especially in these days, because I think we can all agree that prices have gone up like crazy. Yeah. Since post-COVID, everything has just gone up. I was just seeing numbers the other day and I was thinking, this is scary. I mean, I saw numbers on certain areas that was 30 and 35% and 40% price increase in just the last 2 or 3 years, right? And you know why? That's because consumers accept it. I mean, if consumers didn't accept it, the price wouldn't increase, because I am working on the side of some of the suppliers in this world. And yes, some prices on raw materials have gone up, but they have not gone up 30, 35, or 40%. There's a lot of companies that's just using this opportunity to increase their profit. And I don't know whether the average consumer have realized that, but at the same time, as the average consumer is paying a lot more for the same product as they paid way less 4 or 5 years ago, the company producing that thing has increased their profit quite a lot.
Yeah.
And at the same time, they're sitting there saying, well, prices have gone up quite a lot. And again, it's back to the philosophy about why do the average consumer just accept that instead of challenging that thing? And that's all about negotiation. Now, of course, as I said earlier, Matthew, I'm living and breathing negotiation. I've been doing it for many, many years. So should we stand at the local grocery store and negotiate when we're buying a gallon of milk? Obviously not. That'll be a waste of everybody's time, right? But we have to be careful and sit down and think about where would it make sense to negotiate? What makes a huge impact on my family's budget? And then challenge that. Because what is quite interesting is that any savings that you make on on any purchase of any size, it's if it was a company, it's going straight to the bottom line. It's profit. And the funny part again is, Matthew, if you compare the average consumer to the average procurement officer in a company, he or she would never accept the price from a supplier. If they receive the proposal, what's the first thing they do? They start negotiating, saying, thank you so much for your proposal, but we have to sit down and talk about terms of payment, delivery, warranty, installation, what have you. They just don't accept it. But the average American consumer, again, I'm generalizing, they receive the proposal on something and say, yes, okay, or the alternative, let's get some alternative proposals. They don't even care to think about, we could actually negotiate this thing. So one of the things that I'm really focusing on in the book as well is just trying to give people a checklist. What is it I should do? Because back to the woman you talked about, a lot of people just saying, but I don't know what to say. I don't even have the words that I should need. And the great thing is, I don't think negotiation, Matthew, is rocket science. It's a little bit about being brave enough to ask questions, right? And the funny part, I don't know whether people have been thinking about that, but when you leave a company, for instance, if you've been a customer for a cell phone company and you inform them, hey, I'm going to quit, I'm moving to somebody else. What is often happening? Then they're coming back to you saying, but we have a special prize for you if you stay. And I'm often sitting there thinking, that's almost fraud, because you have been able to give me that prize all along, and you're now offering to give it to me when I'm telling you I'm leaving you, right? So obviously that's been negotiable and been on the table the whole time. And I just want really the average American consumer to think about that. It is negotiable. Everything in life, more or less, is negotiable. I'm normally saying there's only two things you really can't negotiate. Death is one of them, and love is the other one. Everything else is negotiable. Even the IIS are negotiable, Matthew.
Oh, yeah. What's interesting? I have recently found that out, because just recently, and I'm saying like within the past month of mediating, I've had, I think, like 5 clients that have owed between $35,000 and $50,000 in back taxes to the IRS, and they're on payment plans. And then they even got the payment plan negotiated because their income changed, therefore they got a lower payment.
Right.
Yeah, taxes you can do. I recently say, so for years and years and years, I have had an account with DocuSign. I love DocuSign. I've always used DocuSign. I used it when they were really and I think the choice was Adobe and DocuSign.
Right.
There was nobody else. Now there are so many different companies.
Right.
So I've had them for years, and I pay my annual fee, and now I didn't even understand how they billed or how it even worked. But I paid I sent out documents, it was fine. Then about a month ago or month and a half ago, I get an email from DocuSign. I think it's a scam. So like you said, I start asking a lot of questions. Like, okay, wait a second, what? Okay, who is this? Okay, how do you have my information? Okay, and then I'm logging in and I'm like, okay, I'm like, this only because what they were telling me, it was brand new information. And I think a lot of times when consumers get brand new information these days, instantly it's like, it's got to be a scam.
All right.
So I get through the whole thing. Okay, this is DocuSign, because what they're telling me is I've exceeded my limit. I'm like, I don't know what limit you're talking about. I don't have a limit. And they're going, Matthew, you've exceeded your limit. Well, then, and so of course, the first thing I ask them, Keld, is, if I exceeded my limit, what's my limit? I'm like, and so they tell me, and I'm like, okay,
right.
If I exceeded my limit and that's my limit, then how can I still send out documents?
Right.
I'm like, wait a second, this doesn't sound right. Well, so again, not afraid to ask the questions, going, I don't understand.
Right.
Now, I
Right.
will tell you, I was very upset because
Right.
all of a sudden, because like this is Saturday and
Mm.
I've got to mediate on Monday and I
Right.
need to have my ability to sign documents available.
Right.
So, so I'm asking all these questions, looking into it, and I find out, long story short, I find out I have an old account. I told you I've been using forever and ever and ever. I had
Right.
an old account. They need to move me to a new account because the old account, they can't turn me off.
Right.
So when I hit my limit, they can't stop me because back then they didn't have the technology to do it. They didn't need it. And now
Right.
I've exceeded, and they can't shut me down.
Ah, right. Right. Right.
So,
Okay.
but they said, look, we need to get you on a new package, all this stuff. All of a sudden, I went from $300 a year to $3,500
Wow.
a year.
Wow.
That's how much I exceeded my limit.
Right.
They said, based on what you're doing, this is what you need. I'm going, okay, you've lost your mind.
Right.
At that point, I'm like, okay, I'm done talking to you. We're just gonna, and so you know what? I stepped away from the negotiation table.
Right. Right.
Didn't terminate negotiations. I
Mhm.
simply stepped away to then look at my options.
Right.
So I called my brother, who is in tech. He's built
Right.
2 companies. He's in tech,
Mhm.
and he told me something. He said, Matthew, he said, is tech is on pennies, not dollars. They
Mhm.
operate on pennies, not dollars. It's
Mhm.
tech. It's not like it costs them things,
Sure.
similar to what you were saying. But there's a value, and that's how then they raise their prices because it's a value to you, but it only
Right.
costs pennies, not dollars. Well,
Right.
so then I just started looking at lots of different options, Googling, okay, what other companies, what are the features,
Right.
what are the pros, the cons, and I kept circling back going, I really don't want to learn anything new. I've been using it forever. I'm a creature of habit.
Right.
And then I'm looking at safety, security, stability, and I'm going, I don't want to trade the security levels that I have because these are legal documents, right?
Right. Right.
So I returned to the negotiation table. And so I just start asking more questions because I still don't understand their pricing. And I
Right.
cannot negotiate what I don't understand.
Sure.
And so then they said, okay, this is how, we charge per envelope. And I'm like, okay, define envelope. Okay, well, what if I send 6 documents? Is that each of them an envelope? No, one envelope. When I finally understood how they bill,
Mm.
I was ready to negotiate.
Right.
And I
Exactly.
found, wait a second, this is
Right.
tech. And they're
Right.
charging me almost $3 an envelope.
Mm.
That would be like me going to the post office and buying a stamp and just sending out a letter and they're charging me $3.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
no way.
Right.
But I had to ask the questions to
Mm.
understand how it's all done. So now I'm in a position to negotiate.
Right.
So
Right.
I spent all of Sunday
Right.
negotiating with them. And by
Right.
Sunday night, I negotiated a 3-year contract that I was happy with. It was more than what I was paying.
Right.
I went from 300, which was an old price. They don't even have that even available. I went
Right.
from 300 to 1,000.
Right.
But what I did was I negotiated from $3 an envelope
Right.
to $1.61.
Right. Right. Exactly.
What? Now,
Mm.
could somebody have gotten lower? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But you know what? It was something that between the two of us, they were willing to live with, and I was willing to live with.
Sure.
Locked the price in for 3 years. So,
Right.
just like you're saying, everything is negotiable.
For more information about my services or to schedule your mediation with me, either in person or using my iChat Mediation virtual platform built by Cisco Communications, visit me online at imediateinc.com. Call me at 561-262-9121, toll free at 877-822-1479, or email me at mbrickman@ichatmediation.com.